Every morning from 10. Dublin Talks on 98FM.
If you're a dog owner, chances are you've maybe done this before. You're out walking your dog and you want to pop into the shop for a few minutes or maybe into a coffee shop or whatever. And because most shops will not allow dogs in unless they are guide dogs for the blind, you can't bring the doggy in. So what do? You leave him outside. You tie your dog to a lamppost outside while you pop in and you do whatever business it is you have to do. Now, you may not think this is a big deal, but according to an animal rights activist, this practice has to stop as it is cruel. John Carmody, animal activist, took to social media the other day to vent his anger after witnessing this happening. A dog tied to a pillar outside a post, outside a coffee shop. And here's what John wrote. "This drives me insane. I've just come out of a coffee shop with my friend and saw this little innocent fellow waiting for his guardian. And whilst it may be only for a minute or two, these little creatures can be stolen in a split second and used for cowardly dogfights and so on. If at all possible, bring the little one in with you or have someone mind them whilst you pop inside." And I'd like to know, do you think he's overreacting? Is it really that big a deal? Do you do it yourself? Tie the little doggy to a post outside a shop while you go in and you do your business. And are you at risk of your dog being snatched? John Carmody joins me on the line. John, why have you got your knickers in a knot over this?
Well, I think I wouldn't be the only one, Adrian, and I think it's important that you picked up on the story this morning because it's a problem. We have never taken this to task today, to be quite frank with you. There's too much of it going on all over the country, and even right now, people, tying their dogs up as they're going into shops across Dublin city and city centres right now, and these animals are being left tied up, and it's becoming too much of a problem where it's almost becoming the norm now that we can go off and do our shopping and bring our dogs with us, tie them up, going around, picking up what we need to get, and leaving these creatures outside in the rain, in the winds, in the summer heat, and we're just literally forgetting about them for the time we're inside in these shops, and that's not at all acceptable, I think.
Okay, now, like you said, you see this very regularly. I know our Jeremy only saw it yesterday. He doesn't know how long the dog was there, and it was in the shade. It's not like it was in 50-degree heat or anything. But the dog did appear. The dog was a pug. I'm sorry, Jeremy, where was it yesterday? It was at Leopardstown Shopping Centre yesterday, and the dog did appear distressed. Is that your worry?
It absolutely is, and look, we tend to keep these animals as the love of our lives in so many ways, and we apparently have so much respect for them, Adrian. But yet, I think we stop short that when we bring these animals out, we leave it at that, and we tie these animals up. We go into the shops, but it's stupidity at the highest order as well, I think, because we hear the whole time of dog fights going on all over the country, and that issue hasn't really been taken to task either yet. There has never been any newspaper articles about dog fights as such, and because it's a hidden world, and where they get their dogs from is from the likes of people tying their companion animals up outside of the shopping centre, outside of the pharmacy, and they don't think of the consequences to what happened to these poor creatures. So what happens then is that these animals are snatched and taken away.
And is that just your thoughts, or do you know of dogs that have been stolen from outside shops or whatever?
It's a reality, Adrian. It's happening the whole time. It's happening all over the country. A lot of the dogs that would be used in dog fights come from as a result of being stolen outside of supermarkets, outside of pharmacies. And people are none of the wiser. The amount of people I had to stop or wait to come out of these stupid supermarkets and pharmacies and chemists and shops, and only for them to look at me like with a dumb face, to find out like what exactly is my concern. And there's that helpless dog tied up on that stupid chain, or that's waiting to, for their owner to come out. And
okay, now, obviously, as an animal lover, John, you want to see people taking their animals out for a walk. You want to see them exercising them and everything else rather than leaving them in the house all day. So they're out for a walk and they want to run into the shop to buy a bottle of water or a couple of things for dinner or whatever. What else are they to do? They're 9 times out of 10, a shop will not allow you to bring the dog in.
And that's probably where we're at the minute. But I think, like, with a responsible guardian, Adrian, I think that they should know their animal too well, first of all, and they should know the dangers of tying these poor animals up outside of shops while they're going around shopping. I've seen another situation just very recently, actually, of the dog tied up inside, and there was the owner, because I had to go into the supermarket to go after the owner, who was paged in the system, and I seen them from a distance, and there they were, leisurely shopping, looking at products, looking at the backs of the boxes, and they were no more the wiser to the reality of what was happening outside, that if it wasn't probably for me or someone else that stopped to pet this poor little creature and to stay with this animal while their dumbass, guardian was inside of the supermarket, then they could have been taken. But people are still not, clued into this at the minute, sadly. There hasn't been much talk about it, so I'm happy that
No, in fact, it's something I've never spoken about before. And when I saw your Facebook post, I thought, oh, yeah, maybe he has something there. So once again, your post says, this drives me insane. I have just come out of a coffee shop with my friend and seen this little fella waiting for his guardian. And whilst it may be only for a minute or two, these little creatures can be stolen in a split second and used for cowardly dog fights. If at all possible, bring the little one in with you or have someone mind them instead. But again, what are you to do, John, if you're out for a walk with the dog, you're on your own and the shop won't let you bring the dog in, but you have to go into the shop for whatever it is?
Oh, and this is where it gets frustrating again. I mean, I would ultimately hope that they can find someone responsible, if it's only for 2 or 3 minutes, and to ask someone that's walking by, maybe, because sometimes people do like to help, and as we know, most people do probably like dogs. So maybe if it's a case where you have to chain the dog up outside as you go into the supermarket or into the store, maybe ask someone, if at all possible, could you just mind the dog for a couple of minutes? And people are helpful, and I've seen it in the past where they would be happy to oblige by standing beside the dog and waiting with the dog until the person comes out of the supermarket or the chemist, because the reality is that if that doesn't happen, there's a huge chance that this animal is taken, or even worse, we've seen people coming up to these poor dogs, Adrian, and feeding them chocolate or giving them food or kind of rubbing them when the dog doesn't probably want to be rubbed, because the dog is only focused on its owner in the supermarket and them missing their owner as well. So it's a big mess, to be quite honest.
I agree with that chap, says this message. We have a dog. You would never leave him tied up anywhere after a horrific story I was told by a previous owner. She tied her dog up outside a shop and someone came along and set their dog on the poor thing and killed it. Good God.
Well, this is the reality as well, and I think, what happens is that when we do hear of dogs being ripped apart in dog fights that take place in the sheds of people's houses, down dark alleys at night time, and people often wonder where do they get all these dogs from? Well, the reality is that most of these dogs have come as a result of being stolen.
Okay, but I have to be honest, John, now, maybe there is a case of this, but I have never before heard of a dog being robbed while it was left outside a shop. Now, maybe there have been stories like this. Maybe it's happened to somebody. You can let me know on 6797981, but I haven't once heard about it.
There has, dealing with the media for 20 years, I have to say I've no complaints at all with the Irish media covering animal stories, but this is just one story that hasn't been picked up on, and I'm glad that probably you're after breaking the ice on this issue, Adrian, because... Okay,
but another message says, that guy John needs to get a grip. What else can I do? I'm only getting smokes or a paper. He needs to calm down and stop panicking.
No, I think what I'm saying here is quite reasonable, because we would have seen the problems that arise from keeping these animals tied up outside of shops. And the reality is that they are stolen. They're stolen all the time. And a lot of these dogs that are brought out with, by their owners are kind of well-kept dogs. They look quite well, but just there's a disconnect with the owner and the dog, that when they go into the supermarket or the shop, that these animals are just left on those
stay there for 1 second, because Gillian Bird is from the DSPCA, an old friend of this show, and Gillian, you wanted to add something to what John is saying here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's great, John, to be highlighting this. We came across this issue there. I think it was either earlier in the year, when somebody was giving out because their dog was actually taken by the dog wardens for being tied up outside a shop. But it is important to note that it is actually illegal to do this as well. For anybody who's out there, it is. It's technically abandonment. A dog must be kept.
So hang on.
Yeah.
I've given the example. I'm out with my dog, going for a walk, and I'm walking past the shop. I'm dying of the thirst because we've had a long walk, and I run in to get a bottle of water, and I tie him to the pole outside the shop. Mm-hmm. That is illegal.
It is. It's technically abandonment. Because a dog must be kept under effective control at all times. That is. But
he is being kept under control. He's attached to the pole.
He's not. He's not. Because what if somebody goes up to him? What if somebody gets their buggy tied, tangled up in their lead? What if he decides he's going to have a go at some child who bends down to pet him? He's not technically under effective control. And also the number of dogs I've seen that have been tied to those little swing signs outside shops.
Yes.
And all it takes is the dog to get a fright, get a breath with wind, and off the dog goes with the sign in tow up the road. And of course, the noise it's going to make, the faster it'll go. And you end up with a dog that's loose, that's knocking over pedestrians, that's running out on the road, that could be causing traffic accidents.
Oh,
and
right.
So
now I have to say, this is something I didn't realise, that it is actually illegal to leave your dog unattended outside a store, be it tied to a lamppost or not.
Yeah, and dog wardens do have the right to actually take a dog that is left in that situation. Now, obviously, we know that in most cases the owner has just popped into the shop for something, but it is just something people should note, that any of the shops that have left the little hooks outside their doors or the little bowl of water outside the door for the dog, that's lovely, but we do have to be aware that not every dog that's tied up outside a shop is a friendly little dog that can be petted by a child.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people don't always tie them up on a very short lead, and even if they do, there's no guarantee the dog's not going to slip their collar. There's no guarantee the dog's not going to, be tangled up in something. And the fact that it's not actually fair on the dogs. A lot of dogs, when you see them outside the shops, are petrified, and so they should be, because there's bikes and there's buggies and there's kids and everything walking past.
Okay, but the important message is, and thanks for the call, Gillian, that this is illegal. Luke, you wanted to get in on this very quickly. What do you want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, he's saying about, first of all, 99% of shops won't allow you into the shop with a dog unless it's a guide dog, So you have no choice but to tie it up outside. But, and he's saying about, if you should just find someone to mind the dog for you. But how would you know who's going to be genuinely helpful? And how would you know they're not trying to steal your dog?
Well, actually, John, that's a fair question. How do you find somebody who could look after your dog when you have to run in to get your bottle of water?
I could only hope that a good judge of character, if that's what the person would be, that they will be able to probably see that maybe this is a decent person that could probably look after my companion animal for the 2 or 3 minutes while I'm popping into the chemist. But I would hope that we don't even have to go there, that people should plan their days appropriately and hope that they don't have to chain their companion animals up outside.
All right, John, thanks very much indeed. That's John Carmody, and thanks also to Gillian from the DSPCA. A huge reaction to that, and I'm sorry we don't have enough time to devote a little bit more time to it. A lot of people saying that, he's making a mountain out of a molehill here, it's no big deal, but I'm very interested. I never knew that it's actually illegal to leave a dog tied to a post outside a shop. You're listening to 98FM's Dublin Talks.
Every morning from 10. Dublin Talks on 98FM.